This is The Night Shift with entertainment 3 till 6, starting with Prisoner Cell Block H.
The art of the stripper enters new territory. Gone will be the floor shows in CD clubs. In will come sophisticated... Well, somebody's got to do this, haven't they? In will come sophisticated topless table dancing. I'm going to make this link even longer. That's what Peter Stringfellow, the man behind it... Stringfellow? I'm getting confused. The man behind it says it is.
So what will the bishop say?
Yeah, look it out. Absolutely, what the hell?
Come on, call Jetpack! 50, 50, 50! 50, 50, 50!
Here we go. Now, I just explained to you what's happening, basically. Very attractive woman there, right from the start. Very, very good-looking girl, I've always thought. So handsome we've had to black her face out, right?
Considering there are 4 people in the band, and considering that they can't do much out there without good drumming and bass playing, do you two ever get annoyed at the attention given to Morrissey?
And now, Donahue and the women of TV talk.
Don't be bored, Hal!
Friends!
Oh! 8, 9, 8, 27, 27, 27.
Ooh!
Hi, we're on the night shift. That hotel over there is called the Tudor Hotel. There's probably one down there called Stuart, and this is Windsor, so they're very into the monarchy here.
Night time.
Hello! Do we have a microphone? I hear myself, but does anybody out there, Mango, Fandango, hear me? I've sorted the camera, but the microphone's been a bit weird. Mango, Fandango, hello. Can you hear me? There's a bit of a delay. I can hear me, but I can't see me down here. You can hear me. Thank you, Mango. Where would I be without you? I'm going to take these headphones off now, because it seems to be working. And I can't stand the sound of my own voice. Especially, like, coming out in the same room. I fixed the camera, you'll be glad to know. So I can, in fact, let me test it. Right, do not look directly at this lens, okay? So if you're looking at the stream now, which I kind of want you to, just do a quick test, okay? Look at that. Focus. Look. I see you in there. Mango Fandango. Basically, I fixed the camera, and then the microphone started playing up. Not this particular microphone. The microphone audio, the audio converter, is what started playing up. So I can't see my audio level. So old school fool, howdy old school fool, and thank you for joining me on this lovely Saturday evening. So, I hope you enjoyed the intro, whoever caught the intro there. I think it was Mango who caught the intro. I've been doing a lot of procrastinating this week in terms of trying to get my creativity up again, because it's been a bit lapse. A lot of time spent doing stuff on the boat. The boring crap. Get that out of the way. Oh, there it goes, see? Look at that. Straight out of focus, straight into focus. I think I've got the good setting now. So basically, we've got a comment straight away. Oh wow, nighttime was such an influence on my adolescent mind, says Neil Shenton. Neil, you're not the only one, mate. Nighttime television, which I will get onto in the next 1 minute, because I do tend to waffle on a lot, so please bear with me. So I've decided to try and be a bit more creative, get my creative stuff flowing again. So I wrote a little story. I wrote a script about a security guard, which is like a psychological, thrillery sort of thing, which is actually for a friend of mine to help him with a project he's on, which incorporates lots of short films, basically. I won't say too much about it in case he doesn't want me to say anything about it, or in case he doesn't actually use the story. But again, it was something that got my brain thinking. So that was good, in a creative way. So I've been doing that this week. And I did have a plan for the show, for this stream, I should say. The show. I do like that word. I did have a plan for the show. But a few things got in the way this week, so that kind of went out the window. But I do have an interesting segment for all you classic car enthusiasts out there. Slightly different channel, admittedly. Sticking with, I mean, pretty much any regular viewers to this stream will know that eventually the classics kind of cover everything. The classic Coca-Cola, for instance, with the full sugar. Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, is it? Official sponsor of Major Dolby's Cat Stream. They're not. But everything eventually gets around to the classics. So, and I drive a classic Peugeot 205, and I went to look at a 205. Basically, it was beautiful. It was absolutely amazing. But that was a bit unplanned. So, I posted The Other Side of Midnight earlier in the week. A big Tony Wilson fan, despite the fact he did say, and I think it was... And there's Richard! Hello, Richard! That last week I forgot to say hello to Richard. It was pretty ugly. It got pretty ugly. But even... I was going to say, Richard... I think it was Richard who made a comment that Ben Elton... that Tony Wilson praises Ben Elton. Not once, but twice. Don't let that put you off watching it. Tony Wilson's a bit of a legend, and I guess I was introduced to him when I went to the Hacienda in 1991. I won't say how old I was, but let's say that I wasn't old enough to get in. But my huge height and my grown-up attire, which was if I remember right, a T-shirt that had. Do you remember the Happy Eater? It had the Happy Eater logo, the motorway service station Happy Eater. Except it was basically the exact logo, but he was doing that and he was popping a pill in his throat. So I obviously look very mature for my age. But I did get into the Hacienda. I never met Tony Wilson, but I did get to see the Hacienda. Admittedly, not in its prime. When I drove, well, it wasn't me who drove, it was an older friend who drove us up. When we got there, it was a mess. I mean, it was being vandalized and nobody was there. And there was no security or anything. I can't imagine it today, to be honest. But the Hacienda was not looking as good as previous, should we say. But yeah, so I'm a big fan of Tony Wilson. We did see that live on stage at the Hacienda when I went in 1991 was In Spiral Carpets, if anyone remembers them. Good band, sort of around the same sort of time as Happy Monday, Stone Roses. Maybe not quite as big, but to be honest, they may not have been commercially big, but I quite liked the In Spiral Carpets over some of the Happy Monday stuff. Just saying. So I've always been a bit of a fan of Tony Wilson. So yeah, I posted The Other Side of Midnight. Check it out. It's an interesting. I've got 26 episodes of that. They get progressively. That was actually quite sane. That episode. That was the most sane one I have. But I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to take a sip. And the lemon makes it, you see. Okay, so let's quickly go to the comments before I officially start talking about nighttime telly. Neil Shenton, wow, nighttime such an influence on my adolescent mind. Yes, again, as I said, we pretty much for myself as well. Ben Manning, hello Ben Manning. You echo with no bunny men, LOL. Uh-oh, what does that mean? You've got rock and roll slap back on your mic. See, I should have read this before. Let's see whether this makes a difference, because I think... Let's try that. Let's see whether that makes a difference. And I apologise if for everything I've just been saying sounded bizarre. The audio converter has decided to be a bit different this week, and something else to worry about. So you are echoing. I'll just wait. You have to wait about 50 seconds because everyone's a little bit behind. Well, I'm a bit ahead. So we'll see what this has come out like and see whether this is. Mango Fandango says that's better. Thank you very much, Mango Fandango. Give me 1 second and let me just put you on the interlude for 1 second while I quickly put the headphone on and just do a quick tweak because I just need to hear it to see whether it's better. I'd say that was better. It sounds a bit better. It didn't come out in my headphones, the monitoring headphones that I have, so apologies for if I did sound a bit weird. I'll play that back and laugh at that myself. So I think we've got that. We'll ignore the comments about the microphone now. You've got rock and roll. I love that, though. I love Old School Fool, who said you've got rock and roll slap back on your mic. Sing Bebop-a-lula. Oh, I should have done that, but shit. English ladies and gentlemen, how do? And I'll say it again. Hello, Richard. And how is your Saturday going so far? Old School Fool. Evening, Rich. Oh, I won't read that out. Evening. Schooly. I love all your little names and stuff. It's bloody endearing, is what that is. Major Dolby, you are echoing. That's better. Ah, perfect. Love and Spiral Carpets. Ben Manning, yes. Do you find they're a bit underrated? Like, because when people talk about the Manchester scene, they always refer to the Happy Mondays, Stone Roses, and the usual suspects, really. And in Spiral Carpets, kind of like, I think are more than worthy to stand alongside those other names, but often not mentioned as much. The echo was making me feel lonely. Oh, Richard, welcome to my world. Yeah. I have an echo. Do you know what? I perpetually have an echo in my head just so as I don't feel lonely everywhere I go. So that's probably why it sounded normal to me. I was raised in a cave, so to me it felt strangely comforting, says Old School Fool. Oh, I'm glad, Old School Fool. That's the main thing. My iPad's going dark on me. That's the main thing of making you feel comfortable, mate. That's the main thing. You echo with no bunny. Thanks so much for Tony Wilson. Haven't seen him for years. You're welcome, Ben. Yes, as I was saying, you probably heard. Actually, that probably works quite well with the Hacienda memory because, believe it or not, the memory I have of the Hacienda is a bit like an echo. So, no, and Spiral Carpets were justly underrated. Yes, they were, Richard. And I've forgotten the album now. I've got it on vinyl. That's for next week's stream. Oh, yes, next week's stream. We'll be talking about vinyl. Skimming the surface, as we normally always do. But as anyone's seen my stream, what it's titled, and saw the introduction, they probably saw a nice little collection. If you didn't see the introduction when I started, the little intro, watch it at the end. But basically, it's just a few clips that I politely borrowed from certain other sources and manipulated them slightly, but only showed a couple of seconds of things. But that was just a reminder. The one thing I'd sort of forgotten about was the 0898 chat numbers, which I'd forgotten about, but they were riddled. Also, I think Britannia Music used to have this epically long advert for joining their CD club, and they would play, it would be like, all the 80s pop ballads and rock ballads, and this advert would go on for like 6 minutes of advertising, and you'd have, sort of, there won't be snow in Africa this Christmas time, and then, you'll have that, and then you'll have something like I Should Be So Lucky, by Kylie Minogue, which is a weird back-to-back combination. But yeah, they used to advertise crazy stuff. And just going through some of the inserts and sort of thing that some other channels have kindly uploaded for me to reference in a educational purpose. I forgot just how many. I just forgot how many 0898 numbers were, and then as soon as I heard one, I was like, "My God, that used to drive me nuts." Let's put that on the intro, because I'm that kind of guy. Yes, Carpets have a different singer. I met them. I actually think This Is How It Feels is up there with Beach Boys' all-time classic, possibly better than anything by Roses, etc. The La-Las were great too. Yes, I agree there, Ben Manning. Yeah, I do agree. Yeah, the Beach Boys. A huge fan of the Beach Boys when I was a teenager. In fact, there's a good chance that we listened to Pet Sounds. There's a good chance we listened to Pet Sounds on cassette going up to Manchester in the Hacienda. Mind you, we needed that chill out thing before we hit the Hacienda, which wasn't, as I said in the intro, it was, I don't have many memories of that. Really don't have many memories. It was the only time I took a certain popular culture drug at that time, and quite frankly, wasn't my kind of thing. I really it didn't go well with me, and that was the only time I ever took it, and I think I was like 14. But it interests me anyway. Because I later went on to be this is a completely irrelevant topic, but I later went on to be a warm-up DJ at an all-night warehouse club in Torbay. Let's just say Torbay. And I remember being the warm-up DJ, and then the main DJ would come on after me, and I won't say a name, but he was pumped full of every single drug you can imagine. And I used to be amazed that he could stand, let alone produce such a brilliant set. But then I guess that's what some DJs were doing back then. Me, I think I may have had a Bacardi and Coke for my warm-up. Ben Manning, I met them at a fest. Which fest was that, Ben? Did you come away feeling like, yes, I'm happy. They were really friendly, or were you sort of disappointed? Because there's always that thing when you meet somebody that you really aspire to, and they turn out to be complete arseholes. I'm not saying in Spiral Carpet are, but it'd be interesting to know. My friend Carmen, says Richard English, to cop off with Clint Boom at a DJ set. Oh, he was scared off when she told him she'd snap him in two. I'd be scared off. But that's a pretty good claim to fame right there. Old school fool. I was at Glastonbury and heard Manc voices. Then Bez appeared from between two caravans and stared daggers at me, saying, "We'll be all right once those fucking terrorists look off." Oh, terrorists. That's a whole other different kind of gig. Scary bloke in the flesh. Got that impression. Never met him. But yes, he's a little bit unhinged. I think you could say Bez is a bit unhinged in terms of his personality. So I can imagine that being quite frightening. Richard English. But Sky had the dodgy foreign sex line adverts. Oh, you're just trying to make me read German. I can't read another language. I barely read English, Richard English. Libretad. Hello, Libretad. Hello, thank you for joining me again. Lovely to see your name. I like The Fall, but only want maybe 2 albums. Okay, not familiar with that. Must have been not familiar. Oh no, that's I like The Fall. That's not the band The Fall. I know there's a band called The Fall, but you're talking about not talking about In Spiral Carpet's song, are you? So it's been about 15 years since I listened to a lot of Manchester music. I wouldn't say I went off of it. There was a friend of mine. This is going off topic a wee bit. I wanted to get back onto the night stuff, but I used to bunk with someone at uni who was a massive Joy Division fan. And to be honest, I totally get Ian Curtis and how clever a songwriter he was. But my God, to listen to that music over and over again, and then he would say, well, if you don't like that, then you don't really like Factory Records, and you don't really. And it's like, it's not that I didn't like it; it was just constantly listening to it. It's just a little bit depressing sometimes. And I think somewhere along the line, I sort of rebelled a bit and sort of, and then 24-Hour Party People came out, which was a great movie, and Steve Coogan plays a fantastic Tony Wilson, to be honest. So Nighttime, Richard. Here's my recollection of coming in. So this is an average night for me. We go to the Ritzy Torquay. It'll be about 1 o'clock when we stumble out, which is obviously when it closed, because this is Torbay and they don't have clubs open until after 1. I'd go and get a jacket potato from the Jacket Potato Man. The Jacket Potato Man was a bit of a legend. I think he did that round for at least 20 years. I think I heard a couple of years ago he passed away, which, that hit me. It genuinely did, because those garlic potatoes he used to do at 1:30 in the morning, my God, they were the best potatoes in the world, They made Smith's crisps cry. So I'd get home at around 2 a.m. Living with my parents, I lived with my parents until I was 21, which is quite old considering most people bugger off at 18. I was there till I was 21, so I was clubbing at 15, to be honest. So they had to go through 6 years of an adolescent teenager coming in at 3 a.m. drunk, puking up all over the place, and God knows what. So basically, I'd come in, but on the nights that I was more coherent enough to be able to switch on my television in my bedroom, The Hitman and Her became a staple viewing program. Let's quickly go to the comments before I'll lead on to the next part. Your Torbay in Somerset, not far, mate. Oh, yeah, Torbay in Devon, Ben Manning, Devon. Yeah, I'm not there now, because Torbay doesn't have a canal, which is a bit shit. Because every town should have a canal. But I am originally from Torbay. I hide my Devonshire accent really, really well. Richard English. I had a girlfriend who insisted we listen to Joy Division during, oh no, intimate moments. It puts you off when you've got Ian Curtis in the background bellowing, "This is the way, step inside." Yes. But what a weird choice. I mean, I'm going to go with the cliches, you could put on some sort of like classic seduction soul or something, Joy Division, my God. So yeah, I Hitman and Her, but so that was a staple of my nighttime television. And then I met a girlfriend, and I moved in with my girlfriend, and I became a unemployed wannabe Hollywood writer. I had a Smith Corona typewriter, even though I had a computer then, and computers were around. Windows 98, I think it was. I preferred too much work and no play makes Jack no boy. I preferred a typewriter. There's something about the tradition of having a typewriter. So here I am, my early 20s, writing my masterpiece screenplay, and spending God knows all hours of the night. I used to find, and I still find this, that I work better at night, bizarrely, which is really annoying sometimes. There's less distractions because every other normal person's in bed. So I work at night. And I used to have a break. And the programs that I used to watch at, I guess, anywhere from about midnight till about 3 a.m. were Carnal Knowledge. I don't know whether anyone remembers Carnal Knowledge. I believe it was where Graham Norton started. I'm not 100% sure. I've tried to find it online, but I couldn't find that and back that up. But I think Graham Norton was a presenter on that. It was like couples playing against each other, about their sex lives, answering questions about their sex lives. It was quite It was quite a good production actually. It was all like cock and ball jokes, but you know, it's late night television. I will never feel the same, but about Joy Division again. Sorry, Ben Manning. Yeah. You can blame Richard for that because you know next time you listen to that song, yeah, you'll be thinking of lots of Parkinson anecdotes tonight already. I haven't even started yet, Richard. God, bloody hell. Old School Fool. Yes, Rich. It's also fun watching Johnny Marr postulating. That's a good word. Postulating in between playing Smith's tunes that fall flat without Moz. Yes, that's true. I have a couple of Smith's albums. I remember Carnal Knowledge says, Richard, also, i.e. your intro, Central Live, yes. Well, because it was regional, and if anyone, I think I wrote a little bit about it in the blurb of the program I posted the other side of midnight on Monday, that they basically split regions up, and they all sort of borrowed and shared certain programs, and they went out on different regions. The region that we had in the Southwest was TSW, Television Southwest. So then there's obviously Central, Granada, 90's, you name it. There was, I think, at least 6 prominent ones, and they all used to just basically just like buy in content, mainly coming out of, believe it or not, Manchester. I think Granada were the biggest purveyors of productions, so everything sort of stemmed from there, and sort of spread around the country. So that's where I first heard of Tony Wilson. I think it would have been when I was 14 maybe, so sort of 89, something like that. So I got to that, and then that actually led to who is Tony Wilson, and I remember before the internet, I remember a friend of mine was well into the Happy Mondays at that. Was it Happy Mondays or Stone Roses? It was either the Happy Mondays or Stone Roses, and said, "Oh, that Tony Wilson that you've seen on late night telly, he's a record producer." And then it all spiraled up there, and then obviously a year later I'm at the Hacienda. So, Old School Full, the grating Gary Crowley at the best, on the best. Sorry, why can't I read tonight? I tell you why, because the iPad's gone dark. The grating Gary Crowley on the beat. Please stay brighter. My eyes, as I get older, my eyes. So Carnal Knowledge was a quiz show. That was, Richard remembers it. If anyone else remembers it, then, in fact, I have it. Let's see whether this works quickly. This might jog a few memories. Not the outro. I had it all set. Let me go back to the webcam. That was like a quiz show, basically, like a quiz show. Oh, it was muted. Oh, but bloody Pete's sake. I know why it was muted, because the audio's coming out of the desktop, and that it was doing the echo thing. I tell you what, let me play that again, because it's worth it just for the theme tune. Let me play it again, and let me mute my microphone. Let's try it that way. Let me mute the microphone.
But now it's carnal knowledge.
Carnal knowledge, carnal knowledge. Go get some carnal knowledge. Passion is great and not, but they don't teach it in college. The more that you know, the deeper you go. Go get some carnal knowledge. Carnal knowledge, carnal knowledge. Go get some carnal knowledge. Carnal knowledge, carnal knowledge. Go get some carnal knowledge.
Phone issue that I'm a bit dubious. I think that's just send a quick that's okay for the microphones, because I will sort that out. That's another problem that that seems to stem from just randomly going wrong. But that was carnal knowledge. Yes, Richard, true. He was better talk. Oh, sorry, we've missed it. Terry Christian. The word wasn't really. Sort of. It was obviously late night. But the late night telly that sort of nighttime started on ITV, and it was predominantly ITV, I think. Channel 4 would probably have a movie on it at the time. But yeah, the word was sort of 11 o'clock, wasn't it? I remember I was a big fan of the word. It was a car crash television. There was also a couple of other shows around that came out around that time as well that were nowhere near as offensive as the word could be. But I seem to remember the Girly Show. If anyone remembers the Girly Show, I think that was that Northern lass. What's her name? She's on Radio 2 now. I always liked her. I've forgotten her name. She's quite sexy. Sarah Cox. The Girly Show. But yes, that was a sort of like a carry on from the word, I guess, but a little bit more tame. But that sort of pushed or propelled the girl power thing, because I remember it being specifically, or very specifically, about women being as lewd as men. So it was a love or hate. I used to love it. I did used to love it. But that was because I loved Sarah Cox, you see. Yes, the 90s were a bit shite, weren't they, Richard? You look back at it now, I think, with a certain amount of, well, and definitely in retrospect, a certain amount of, there was something reassuring about it. There was something that cannot be replicated today because of the I won't go into the politics again. Somebody brought that up last week, but the whole PC thing. I mean, some of those shows, the lad culture in particular. And I've been rewatching Men Behaving Badly, which I have to admit, I still really like. The lad culture stuff, the ladette culture of the Girly Show and things like that. Katie Puckrick, I can see that name pop up there. We're going too far down. There was also Laurie Pike. Do you remember Laurie Pike? Laurie Pike used to host a late night Channel 4 series called Manhattan Cable, which was, again, before the internet, but it was looking at public access television. And that was always something I really liked because it showed you a glimpse of all these crazy Americans coming out of this New York public access television channel. If anyone knows a little bit of the history about Wayne's World, the film Wayne's World, that was supposedly started on this mythical public access. It was a spoof of one, but that's the kind of programming that Laurie Pike would introduce in Manhattan Cable. When you say Katie Puckrick, I remember her being on that as well. The Girly Show, of course, says Richard English. Protest, yeah, Wanker of the Week, that's the one. And it was always Chris Evans for obvious reasons. Yes, I remember the Wanker of the Week segment. My girlfriend and myself used to watch that, so we had a lot of fun with that show. It was fun, and that was a very good product of the 90s, especially for the ladette stuff. Old school. I fancied Katie Puckrick at the time. Old school fool. Oh yes, Katie. Yeah, I remember I remember her taking over from. Well, she took over from Mark Lamar, I believe. Mark Lamar, when he had a massive falling out with Terry Christian, at the point where I believe that there was punches thrown, which wouldn't be a surprise because it's the word. I think that they did replace Lamar. I think eventually, he went and Puckrick took over the main role of presenter. I think she was there before that, but yeah. I guess it was the programs on ITV nighttime that were obscure, and there was many programs that would be one-offs. I can only sort of like compare some of the content to Why Don't You for adults, for well, you say adults, for kind of drunk people. There was some really odd stuff that would turn up on there. Public access feel to it. I must admit, which is why I mentioned Manhattan Cable. Old school fool, Richard, you are a man of culture. He is very much so. Old school, yes. Ladette is lass. That's it, lass. Yeah, so some people embraced that, some people didn't. Late and Loud was a chat show which set out to offend pretty much everyone. There's a clip of it. I managed to find a clip of it on the YouTube channel. Adrian Mills, I believe, was one of the presenters. But I remember at the time it was Adrian Mills, Nikki Campbell, Tony Wilson made appearances on it, and I believe it went out live, or may have been live from Granada Studios. Just spent too much time watching telly. You can never spend too much time watching the telly that we watch, Richard. The telly today, you wouldn't want to give that 5 minutes, but yeah, no, and do you retain it? That's the thing, you retain it, don't you? You have these memories of it. You have these drunken late night memories of like watching some of these programs. James Whale radio show, correct? Yes, old school for James Whale show was okay. Good when Charlie Chuck was on. I think James Whale is actually very ill today. Recent times, I think he's not well at all. So I expect his name to be popping up at some point. Bit of a. I mean, the last 10 years, last 15 years hasn't done James Whale really well. I mean, he was still going by the notoriety he caused when he had that show. He hasn't really been in the limelight for about 20 years, if you're being like truthful. Don't forget short animated films on late night Channel 4. They were amazing. They were, Richard. Channel 4. I know I mentioned that most of the nighttime stuff was on ITV, but earlier in the 80s, maybe not so much the 90s, I remember a series there that nobody remembers that I absolutely loved. It was a bizarre animated series called Beer and Skittles. To this very day, I believe I found one episode of it once on YouTube. It may still be there. Bizarre animation. I think it went out sort of 85, 86. I think I was very young when I saw it, but it made an impression on me. Sort of surreal and odd. But yeah, Channel 4 used to do some very interesting animation stuff. Channel 4 did something similar on Sunday afternoons, late 80s, I think. Forgot name, really arty. Sunday afternoon. Do you remember the Sunday show? That was we've moved off topic. Sunday show. That was I always thought that was a strange thing to be going out on a Sunday morning. They got away with a bit of stuff in that. I'm not sure who. Was it Richard Herring? Richard Herring and Stuart Lee, I think, were involved in the Sunday show. I might be wrong. I used to sing along to Job Finder. Do you remember Cowboys by Phil Malloy? It's on YouTube. Don't remember that, Richard? No, don't remember that. Last week I went back over the chat and I wrote all the things down. Do you know this week I haven't watched one thing? I haven't watched anything this week. I was catching up on a few YouTube channels. I watched a few true crime channels and a few narrowboat channels, and I just didn't have the time. And I want to watch more stuff, and I will make it my mission to watch more stuff. So most of the nighttime television, by the time it came to The Hitman and Her, you were probably a little bit, blotted. You certainly weren't in the most cognitive state. But The Hitman and Her used to go on for 2 hours. And it was just music, and probably music that you've just heard playing in the club you've just come from. So it's like the clubbing doesn't end. It's like you're back home and you're just continuing the night. Which I wonder how many people watched Hitman and Her that it instigated a perpetual cycle of alcohol, because we're at home, but let's drink another. Oh, I've got some vodka downstairs. Let's keep the party going. Thanks, Hitman and Her, Michaela Strachan and P. Waterman. Oh, that's good. So I think I'd very rarely would get to the end of The Hitman and Her without crashing out. So I'd probably crash out around 2:30, 2:45. And then you wake up at like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and your parents are screaming at you for, you shouldn't have stayed in the bathroom. That's just my recollection of it. But there was, and I do smoke. Anyone who's just joining, I will smoke a cigarette during this stream. There was a series called In Bed with Medina. At the time, I found it funny. Bob Mills, I think he writes for the Daily Mail. I'm not sure, I might be wrong. He writes for one of the newspapers now. At the time, I found it funny. It's not funny anymore. It's not funny. But the concept was basically just Bob Mills in a studio, plays a videotape, pre-recorded, takes the piss in a really sort of unclever way. It's pretty bad, but I remember liking it back in the day when I was sort of a young teenager. In Bed with Medina used to be on, and I did find a clip of that. But I tell you what's the best thing about that stuff that I posted. What's the best thing about the intro is the idents, the music that was used by ITV. The logos, the cat on the moon. There's some really great sort of idents. Sod off iPad. There's some really great idents in those in that little like intro, and they brought back memories. It was almost like memories that they should be better memories. They should be better memories after watching something like that, and then you get the program comes on, you think this should be better. This program should be better because the idents just outshine the programs. Bob Mills was awful, unservedly smug. Correct, old school fool. He was, but I think maybe I didn't see through that at the time. Maybe at the time I thought that it was funny. I don't know. It's really there's no comedy in it. It's very flat now. I was dancing at a house party once. A very nice bottom danced backwards towards me. She turned around and it was Michaela Strachan. Oh, she's lovely. Michaela Strachan, I met her as well. I met her at a Children in Need event in Torquay. Probably 89, something like that. She was lovely. She was lovely. And I think she's just one of these people that's really nice. Even with screaming, adoring fans and stuff like that, she's just one of these people that's like really nice, and doesn't come across star-like at all. Michaela Strachan was a star, there's no doubt about it. The Really Wild Show was a big show for me as a kid, so I remember when I found out that she was going to be at Children in Need, and I guess I had a crush on her. When I was younger, and so she was hosting something at the English Riviera Centre, and I remember like getting to talk to her for probably about a minute. She did something else as well. She hosted something else that was popular on BBC. Was it the holiday programme? She did the holiday programme after. I'm trying to remember. Children in Need, Woke. This was back in the day, Libertad. This was back in the day when Children in Need was really exciting, because it meant that you get regional broadcasts, and it would be a big thing, because sometimes you get famous stars come down to Torbay. I haven't watched Children in Need in 20 years, but I do know what it's become. But it was, back in its day, it was a way that for someone like myself, a young kid, to... Who did I remember seeing? I remember seeing Michaela Strachan, definitely Michaela Strachan. I think chap called Terry Nutkins, who I think is still alive. Terry Nutkins. It was like a nature program person. I think he did a series called Nature-wide or something back in. It was a little bit before my time, but they reran like a children's nature program for kids back in the 80s. I had a crush on her too. She was taken that night though. Oh, bad luck, old school. Yeah, bad luck, mate. Yeah, she was. I think she was a bit of a heartbreaker. She was definitely. Her face on a lot of children's programs that may have been. I get the impression that she could have been a first crush for many children back then. I think I was just a little bit older when she got really kind of like popular, and I was who was I looking at sort of 1989? No, it wasn't Jan Francis. It wasn't Jan Francis then. It was, I'd moved on from Jan then. Sorry, Jan, I'd moved on from Jan then. It was trying to remember who it was. I always had a soft spot for Jill Dando. Lovely Jill Dando. But that's gone quite dark, especially when you start talking about Jill Dando. But yeah, so late night television. There was a mixture of tat. But there was some gold. The Late Loud Show, also known as the Late Loud Show, produced by Granada, was one of those chat shows where they would talk about, Nicky Campbell would come in. Nicky Campbell would come in, who I guess is who's that guy now? Jeremy. He's a complete bell end. Jeremy Vine. Jeremy Vine. Bell end. I guess Nicky Campbell was a bit like an early Jeremy Vine. So he's probably not gone down in such good memory, but Nicky Campbell would be really argumentative with people. They'd have somebody on the Late and Loud show. Somebody would be like saying something like, ecstasy is good and should be legal. And then Nicky Campbell would, sort of, how can you say that when this person's dead and this person, you're talking to this person's mother who lost their child? And it was really, he was just really confrontational. Like it was, this guy's like, well, I don't know, he doesn't know anything really about, this person's daughter who took this drug and then died. He just basically likes taking it and having a good time out in a club. It doesn't really think about any of the other things, but it would be so. They would be staged. It would almost feel staged. It would almost feel like, let's get the dumbest kind of guy and let's just exploit him. And I think the Late Loud show, they would have experts as well in the audience. I guess it was like Kilroy, but late and loud. And you'd swear and talk about subjects that probably would make Kilroy silk blush. So it was an X-rated Kilroy that went out, I think, about 1 a.m., something like that. But I used to love watching it. It used to annoy the hell out of me. There'd be like really annoying so-called experts or commentators that would just really rattle me up. And I think most of them now are journalists for the Daily Mail. So, well. But yeah, the Late Loud show, it was a highlight for me. I remember my girlfriend saying, why'd you watch this if you get so annoyed? Excuse me. She never understood the logic of why I would watch it. I've lost my lighter. Because it would make me, look at that. That was brilliant. It went back in focus straight away. It would make me really angry. She said, oh no, I don't want you to watch that. You get really angry after you watch that. Yeah, I know, but it just gets me angry. But I watch it. You know, the Late and Loud show, and Tony Wilson used to be on it. So. Libertad, Sam Fox. I used to collect page 3s. I used to take them out of the Sun. I can't even say back when the Sun was good. Back when the Sun was good. Back when I was like 12, my granddad used to have a record player, and I grew up with my grandparents. I don't know why they allowed me to do this, or it wasn't like I tried to hide them. I used to take out the page 3 girl. I used to fold up the page 3 girl and slide them down inside the side of the record player, and then eventually I would turn all of the page 3 girls into a scrapbook. And I think I was only like 12 or 13. And Sam Fox, I used to love Sam Fox, and it wasn't because of the should we say the obvious assets. I don't know whether I don't know whether I saw past those and just saw this fun loving sort of girl, Sam Fox, and I don't know, but I even bought one of her albums. Oh my god, I can't believe I admitted that. But I bought a Sam Fox album. I surrender to the spirit of the night, something like that. And touch me, I want to feel your body. Great hits there. Great hits. Oh. In the same stream, we talk about Ian Curtis and Sam Fox. I mean, you're not going to get this anywhere else on YouTube. Maria Whittaker. I remember Maria Whittaker. Terry Nutkins was a lovely fella, sadly no longer. Ben Manning. Terry Nutkins, yes, he was. He used. Can you remember the name? It was the Really Wild Show, but there was something. I'm just trying to remember the shows. There was the thing called Wild Track. Does anyone remember Wild Track? It had one of the best. Sound scores for children. I won't put it on because of the copyright, but. If you type in Wild Track theme, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I used to hide my page 3 cuttings in a dinosaur book. To this day, I can't watch Jurassic Park without getting horny. Oh dear, make me laugh, mate. Make me laugh. Libertad, yeah, nice smile. She. Sorry. Oh, Richard, I'll have to have a little break a second. Libertad, yeah, nice smile. She played with the why am I still laughing? She played with the Motorhead too, Sam. Okay. Animal Magic, Ben Manning. Yes, Animal Magic. That was it. Johnny Morris, I believe, in his retirement time, was sort of part of Terry Nutkins, I believe, sort of took over, if I remember right. With that fellow Johnny Morris, yeah, he was brilliant. Did Disney style voices to animals, very accurate too. He was, yeah. I've watched a few things like that. I know Nick Park has talked about that in the past with Creature Comforts. He borrowed a lot from Johnny Morris for his Creature Comforts films and adverts, I believe they were. So what are any other ones, any recollections you guys have of, guys and gals, that have of nighttime television? I'd love to know. I'd love to hear what, some of your memories of nighttime television is. As I said, mine all stem around being the hitman in Her was the last thing that I'd probably fall asleep to. But we, did when I was with my girlfriend. We lived in a caravan. She was going to Bicton College. She was a young farmer. Oh my God, did I go once? I go out with some young farmers for a night out. I've never been in such a rowdy bunch of yokels as the young farmers. No disrespect to young farmers. No disrespect to young farmers. But she was a very quiet girl. Went to Bicton College, and was suddenly thrown into a social life of hooliganism. It's just, there's no way to explain some of the parties that she used to come back from. Yeah, who'd have thought? Young farmers, bunch of crazy. If you know, in America where you have the movie Dazed and Confused, a film about the 70s, like, you know, end of school, and everyone goes to a keg party, kegger, and everyone's kind of crazy American, loud, abusive, and obnoxious. It's a bit like that. Young farmers. Yes, we used to live in this caravan, and I remember it being really cold in the winter. I always remember, like, you if you keep your legs up where the fire, because the heat was rising, you'd be fine. But if when you went to get up off of the sofa, you put your legs down on the ground, they turn into a block of ice instantly because there was just no heat down there. So we used to, like, snuggle up, and that was always something I liked to do. Snuggle up in front of late night television. With your girlfriend and stay warm and watching utter shite. I miss that. Ben Manning says, After Dark was the most incredible show ever made. It ran for about the late 80s onwards, before the internet, and some of the shows were about UFOs and secret spies, all sorts of secrets. So it was like a paranormal, supernatural kind of, you know, sort of show like that. There was I don't think I ever saw it. But I would have watched it because I was into that then. And like you say, before the internet, this was a good way of sort of like seeing these kind of shows, because they certainly didn't make mainstream television. They were always, you know, after the watershed and stuff, these kind of shows. So yeah, I do Channel 4 all night. Channel 4 used to have a thing called the Shooting Gallery. That was they'd show lots of short films, and that was the only way you could really get to see a short film back in the day. Shooting Gallery lasted for a couple of years, and I used to record Shooting Gallery. I think it was on a Thursday night. Be like 4 hours of short films, and in there was some great classic short films that I remember seeing, including, I think that was the first time I saw The Telephone Box as a Portuguese horror film, short film. I think it's translated into The Telephone Box. If you haven't, I think it's called The Telephone Box. It's a good film. It's a good short film. Live discussions. Old School Full Thriller was amazing. Yeah. Thriller. Oh, I've been binging the 70s TV show Thriller recently. Great trim phone nostalgia fest and great writing. Thriller, there's some great episodes in Thriller. A friend lent me the DVD. I've never owned them. Friend lent me the DVDs with all the episodes and stuff, and I remember watching it. But we'll go back about 15 years. But it was good. It's got some good stuff in there. Some of the Hammer House of Horror, the television series that they had in the early 80s, some of those are great as well. Most of them, if I remember, are rehashes of their films in a shorter format. But there's still some stuff in there that is fantastic. And I love those kind of 70s shows like Thriller, like Nigel Neal's Beasts, Journey to the Unknown, and a lot of those for the ones that are left, because most of them have been wiped, but they were great. I love those kind of stories, and we just don't get that kind of stuff anymore. So it is good to revisit those things, I must admit. Everything looks fine with the stream. I have sorted out the camera now, so I can do a little dance and move about and stuff without the focus going, because the focus was driving me insane. So that's good. So yeah, that was. I'll try and find out a little bit more about that. Then there's Ben who mentioned that series about the paranormal UFOs. Yeah, Ben, After Dark, most incredible show. I'll try and see whether I can find that, Ben. There was a chat show called After Dark. It's famous for having an Oliver Reed moment I think it was like a discussion panel, and I've been trying to get hold of all of those because, especially, I think the Oliver Reed one is available on. It's the one where basically, I've got to watch out what I say, but I think there's a clip on there, a rather large, middle-aged, stereotypical-looking lady, and I think he starts talking about maybe she should just go out and look for a man. It's a car crash. I'm pretty sure that was called After Dark. Those were the kind of chat shows that I really like, though, because when you're watching them, you feel immensely uncomfortable while watching them, and and they leave an impression. And that particular one, Oliver Reed did leave an impression at the table. But yeah, I think that used to be it was on BBC Two, and it was around 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning. Yes, After Dark with Oliver Reed. That's the one. Oh, the Keith Allen one. Yes, Old School Fool. You've obviously seen it. It is brilliant television. It is absolutely brilliant television. Ollie is just so plastered and doesn't give up, and yeah. God, and it is uncomfortable to watch, but very funny, very funny. Oh yeah. Link above for After Dark when you get a chance. Thank you, Ben. I'll pin that. I'll pin that. I think I can pin it on the video so people get to see it, especially something we've been talking about. And I would like to see that. I might remember like the credits or something. Armchair thriller with a faceless nun scared the bejesus out of me. Old School Fool. Armchair thrillers. They were again. They were just like anthology stories. Haven't watched as many armchair thrillers, but I know the series. Does anyone remember the drama where Charles Gray is a paranormal researcher who actually eats a ghost? After Dark was live discussions. Yes, Ollie Reed, you're correct, yes. There is a drama, Charles Gray is a paranormal researcher who actually eats a ghost. How do you eat a ghost? That's fascinating. He eats. I mean, obviously there's a sexual connotation to that. I'm just wondering how you eat an apparition. The mind boggles. Old School Fool. Yes, After Dark. I'll read. It was in English. Originally, Hammer House of Horror was supposed to end with Christopher Lee returning as Dracula, with the revelation that he was responsible for all supernatural happenings. Oh, that would have been fantastic. I know Lee had obviously grown extremely tired of putting in his fake fangs, but that would have been bloody and brilliant. Great way of ending it. Keith Allen is the human equivalent of psoriasis. Psoriasis. Thank you, Richard. That's not a word I have to say out very often. Psoriasis. The human equivalent of psoriasis. I used to really, really fancy his daughter when she first started singing. Can't stand her now. Ben Manning, the gourmet. The gourmet. Okay, that's the name of that. Okay, the gourmet. It actually eats a ghost. That's fascinating. That's got me thinking. That's got me wondering. That really has got me wondering of how that plays out. Yeah, Lily Allen. Lily Allen, when she started, I can't stand her now. I saw her on a bus go past the other day. Not literally, just advertising some bollocks. Annoys the crap out of me now. Can I be able to go from sort of like... I mean, that was a pretty good album. First album. The debut album by Lily Allen was pretty good. I liked it. And if I listened to it, even back then, if it's something modern and popular music, it didn't really touch me or do anything for me. But that Lily Allen debut album, I was always shocked to find out that was, her father. Keith Allen was her father. Is Lily Allen a singer? Arguably, Richard, yes, I would argue that she is. I tell you, the debut album by Lily Allen, I liked that album. I can't remember the name of it, but Just like I liked All Saints back in the day. I used to love All Saints back in the day. And, you know, I think the one thing that, go back to the 90s conversation, it was the Spice Girls that did it. It was the bloody Spice Girls. That first song the Spice Girls had, I know, that didn't make an impression. I'll tell you what about, oh, shut up. Just tell you what, that's what I want. I want you to shut up. That didn't make any impression on me. But around that time, I must admit, it got me into that kind of popular music. And I can't remember exactly which Spice Girls song it was, but it was a couple after that I'm like, actually, this is pretty good. This is pretty good. I'm tapping my foot and I didn't even realise it. And then that sort of brought in some of those bands of the 90s. And, you know, as I said, I can't say I listen to the music today, but at that time when I was with my girlfriend, I remember buying the All Saints album. It was the first car I owned with a CD player, and I remember buying the CD to play it in there. And I can't remember which album it was, but I quite liked them at the time, and that opened up this sort of, I dipped my toe into popular music again, briefly, and then I just, you know, sort of went back off onto my, you know, I got into David Bowie around that time, sort of classic Bowie stuff. But yeah, I did drop my foot into popular culture then. I was on Lily Allen's show. She was a mess. The apple didn't land far. Also, you're on her show, Old School Fool. Oh, I know. I don't. What's she like? What is she like in real life? I mean, I know in the last like 10 years, controversy for controversial sake, I don't know. The whole star thing is gone for me now. It generally has. I get so frustrated with it all, and I just switch off now. But you know, when they're, it's like Charlotte Church. It's like Charlotte Church when she started. You know, she was this. I don't know where I'm going with that. But I'd be interested to know what she was like, Old School Fool. Who was on her show? Did she have was that a chat show or something? Was she on it? Was it a chat show or something like that? Ben Manning, rich old gourmet that has decided to taste all there is of exotic meals, has already tried the most, even human flesh, when he gets a tip from a rich midget. Okay, you've sold that, Ben. That's a synopsis I want to read. So I'm fascinated by that. Fascinated by it. The midget had tasted everything out of this world, and even something not of this world. In other words, a ghost. I get you. Don't say any more. Don't say any more, mate. I'm gonna watch that. This is from the synopsis. I'm gonna watch it. The gourmet gets very. Read that bit. Oh no, I haven't read that. The gourmet gets very interested, and the midget gives him the info that is needed. And once he has found a haunted place, all he has to do is wait for the ghost to turn up so he can have a meal. Oh, God, this is brilliant. I want to write that. Somebody else has beat me to it. Richard English, all the secrets are coming out now, aren't they? All Saints, Bob Mills, Lily Allen, chat lines. We're going dark places. We are, Richard. We are. I could probably throw in a few more there. But yeah, All Saints. I could definitely throw in another band, but I'm not going to. In fact, I'm not going to even tell you who I once listened to and thought was... you can just guess, but let's just say they broke up. They were a very pop band. They broke up in not an amicable split, and then they reformed again about 10 years later. And there was a documentary made of them, and they were very pop. And there's some songs that I can't help but like, and I don't know why. Ben Manning, the most exotic meal in his career as a Feinschmecker. Girl power. Ugh, girl power. Doesn't that bring back? That's the 90s, mate. That's the 90s. Girl power. I was all for that. You know, I was all for that. I've always treated women with, you know, equality. I've always done that. I was fine with that girl power movement. And they brought some, you know, some strength, women strength behind them, and There was none of the victim culture back then. If the 90s is anything, Richard, and I know you mentioned they were god awful, but if the 90s is anything, girl power, that's never, they never once focused on victimhood. They just went out and said, guys can have that, we're having that. Yeah, girl power, you know, and we're not victims, you know what I mean? So you can say what you want about the 90s. You can, and like even something like Dorothy in episodes of Men Behaving Badly, and what she had to put up with old Clunesy, you know. I mean, she was a strong woman. She was, you know, Caroline Quentin's that character. That's a strong, attractive woman right there. She knew what she knew how to handle all of that stuff. She certainly wasn't a victim. Imagine if that was being... Well, that would never be made today, would it? Let's face it. How many men were in the Spice Girls? So much for equality. All right, Richard. Yeah, all right. Well, some people would probably argue that they were managed by men. So they never had that much girl power, because they were probably, you know, some people might, like, especially those people that love to, like, victim-splain or whatever they call it, you know, that sort of say... Just sort of like say there are no movies with you know, strong female characters, and yet there are like hundreds of movies with strong female characters. But then they say, well, they're not directed by women, and now there's hundreds of movies directed by women about women with strong characters, but they're a bit crap and nobody watches them, including the women. Irony. She was just constantly needing placating, punching cushions before it went on air. I wanted to find out what that Charles Grey drama was for 30 years, and after seeing it on Channel 4 in 1988 as a kid. I hope you find out. Richard English, not Atomic Kitten. Dear God, not Atomic Kitten, Richard. No. You lose a life. What do you... No, definitely, I was never... I couldn't even name a song of theirs. Who do you think is Kim Jong-un's favourite Spice Girl? Who would win in a fight between Richard Harrison? I'm probably going to go with Scary. Scary Spice. Libertad. Sporty Spice reckons it ruined her life. Did it? Yeah. Well, I mean, the movie, Spice World, the movie, that was enough to ruin anyone's life. But I don't like to hear that either. It puts me in mind of those people that turn against something that's brought them huge profits in life to be able to do what the fuck they want to do now. And it's like, when that's the victimhood thing. That really pisses me off. They do a U-turn after, like, you know, 15 years of paychecks dropping into their accounts, and then they suddenly turn around, oh, actually, I was really unhappy at the time. I was really, really sad, and it's like, just stop. Obedient Spice. Oh, classic. But yeah, there's always people like that in different areas of the arts and stuff who sort of do a full U-turn. But you just can't help feel that, you know, well, nobody was forcing you to do it. You know, nobody's forcing you to earn millions of pounds doing it. You know, we'll go out and be a milk lady. Kim Jong's fave Spice Girl, Obedient Spice. Yes, old school fool. That's a classic one. No. Who's going to guess that band? I wonder. I could just name that tune in one, but it would just give it away. No, I'm not even going to go that route. Yeah. So the 90s. So the 90s. There was no victimhood in the 90s, were they? They were all girl power. Say what you will. Say what you will about girl power. I don't care whether they were managed by men. They certainly propelled an image of strength as opposed to a weak victimhood cultural thing going on. And I think that I would take the 90s Spice Girls any day, you know, and that kind of strength and optimism that they gave young girls and boys and adults as well. I always remember finding out that Jerry's ginger spice had been... Oh, this is completely like everything I just said about girl power. I'm basically objectifying Jerry now. But I remember finding out that she had posed naked. And I remember it being a big thing in the media that she had previously posed naked. This was just as they were getting famous, I think. They'd had the big hit. And then they dish up all these photographs that Jerry Halliwell, isn't it? Jerry Halliwell. Terrible. Had posed for all these photographs, and so in some way it was the mainstream media just trying to take that girl power down a peg and say, yeah, you think these are your idols, you think, you know, your children like the Spice Girls, and one of them did this, and it's sort of like objectifying her again. And I know what I've just said about victimhood, stuff like that, but it was a little bit of like the press going after Jerry, and I always felt a little bit sorry for her because, you know, I think she was the oldest of the group, and it was a little bit cruel. Where they tried to bring them down, really. But luckily, fans didn't take that crap from it, and I think the Spice Girls just carried on for inspiring many people without that part behind it. Please repeat the music question. I missed it. Oh, Ben, it's because I talked too fast, mate. Don't worry. Because Richard was the only one guessing this band that I mentioned earlier on that I listened to in the 90s, the late 90s. And he's trying to guess the band. It's a very, very pop band. Here's a hint. Okay, so they basically I think the lead singer after their biggest gig, before their biggest gig, basically in front of like 50,000 people, basically said that this was going to be their last gig. And then somebody else from the band went, yeah, I've had enough of this, and this is the last time I'll be there. And it left the other members of the band a little perturbed because but yeah, they broke up for 10 years then. You'll get that from that. Richard will know who that is. You'll know who that is. But the crap music, it is a bit crap, but it's catchy crap. It reminds me of 90s. It's sort of like 90s ABBA. Girl power chased objectification. That's why they was almost woke. Really? Okay, Libertad. Girl power chased objectification. That's why that was almost woke. Would you say the Spice Girls were the beginning of the woke train then, Libertad? Would you say that girl power movement, if you want to call it a movement, which was really only... I hate the word movement. They called Me Too a movement. That was never a movement. Brother Beyond. Old school fool. Come on, no. Brother Beyond. I do remember Brother Beyond. No, this is the 90s, mate. This was, I think this was probably around... maybe the late 90s. It's definitely the late 90s. I think they broke up in like 2001, 2002 or something like that. And then they got back together in 2010, 2011. And they are back together again. Although I believe the leads, there was never a lead singer. That should give you a clue. There was never a lead singer in this band. They all shared vocal screen time. Although the management did have a favourite, and somewhere along the line, I think jealousy took over. But and they weren't as happy as they seemed to be. Brother Beyond, but that's a good guess. But no, not Milli Vanilli either. But yeah, the girl power thing, which we didn't call a movement back then. I'm interested to take that conversation further. To be honest, I'd be very interested in I'm very interested in that comment actually. Libertad, in a way, yes, it was simple, shallow. When asked, there wasn't anything to it. So a marketing ploy, full-on pop music marketing ploy by probably the men in the management, Spice Girls management, to promote it. But they're, like you say, shallow. I mean, yes, I agree to some extent that anything used. I mean, I do think that was a promotional thing, girl power, and it sort of it certainly brought about other artists that came along after. That's an interesting thought. I must admit, that's made me think, and I like to think. Ben Manning, I always felt Susie Sue, Lennox, Joni Mitchell, Tina Turner, to me they had more power than the Spice Girls, who I found annoying. It seems GP was a bit contrived, a bit woke in that way. So there was more girl power. So instead of saying girl power, those other artists you mentioned there, they encompassed girl power, but certainly weren't using it as a promotional tool, and certainly in a commercial sense, they were just strong female artists. Totally get that. People like Kate Bush as well. I'd put Kate Bush in there as well. A bit of a Kate Bush fan. And I totally get. Oh, and I'm a big Pat Benatar fan. I bloody love. But I'm looking for all the Pat Benatar albums on vinyl, and I don't want to pay extortionate prices for them either. I've bought 3 so far. Ben Manning. That's an interesting comment. Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting comment. That is. I think the commercial aspect, if you want to go by the commercial sort of success, I think the Spice Girls, with the media fully behind them, propelling the narrative, if you want to call it that, propelling the narrative, girl power, and becoming a brand, let's talk modern terms, then yes, compared to those other artists, I do see that. That's good, interesting. That's interesting. But when they first started to where they ended up, I had a little bit of admiration for all the Spice Girls. I couldn't say I disliked any of them. I thought they were all, even Victoria Beckham. There wasn't. I think now I'd probably have a different opinion on some of them now, but anyway. I am going to put on. Is anyone interested? Now this is a bit random. It's Richard's English. Fourth wave feminism, which is what we're living through now, has taken third wave feminism's focus on sexuality, sexuality, and stripped out the equality angle in favor of equity. Yes, I agree. Equity and equality. People don't know the difference between that. I remember there was Jermaine Greer. Jermaine Greer was talking about that in a discussion about 5 years ago. In fact, she brought this up at one of the universities she was going to talk at, and then they basically said, "No, you're not talking here," and she was banned. That's when I remember thinking this is getting insane. I think it was 2016. But yeah, I remember that. I totally understand where you're coming from, Richard. Libertad, Rita Coolidge is the real deal when it comes to intelligence. Okay, that's interesting. Don't know that much about Rita Coolidge. Blasphemy, possibly. He didn't want to hear that sound. It's the lemon that's going under my teeth. It's like when you have the lemon and you get it stuck under your teeth. So I don't know how many of you are interested in this 2.5 minute while I quickly get myself another bottle of Coke. I know that most people will probably take this opportunity to go off and do something much more productive than watch something that I've shot, but stay with it if you like classic cars, because you're about to see one of the finest examples of a modern classic car the Peugeot 205. This is a 1989 Peugeot 205 that I went to look at, currently on eBay. And I was seriously considering replacing my 6-year-old 205 with this. But I did a little road trip to look at this. So I'm going to put this on, and then I am hoping that everything will work. We're near to Stoke-on-Trent and Shane Meadows country, actually. There's been a slight change of plan for what I intended on doing for the stream this week. Richard has very kindly offered to drive me to Melton Mowbray, where there is a Peugeot 205 currently in an auction on eBay. I will never be able to replicate the one I've got because that one cost me £200 at a charity shop. But this one's considerably a little bit more, shall we say. So here it is. Absolutely amazing car. But the trouble is the sunroof. You know when you have a sunroof and you get like a few inches, they remove a few inches. I'm 6'7". That sunroof, which I didn't see on the original photo of the ad, has my head catches, and it makes it a little bit more awkward, especially when you're looking right to go over your shoulder. So unfortunately, the 205 XS with the sunroof is about that much shorter than my 205 without the sunroof. XS. And one of the most amazing things, one owner from new and only 29,000 miles. Yeah, so we're in the Windmill Inn. I'm still kicking myself for being 2 inches too tall for that Peugeot 205, but I'm going to make do with some chips and some haddock. It's such a shame that it couldn't fit in the car. He did have a nice collection of cars, didn't he? What were some of the cars, Richard?
Oh, they had a beautiful Vauxhall Cresta, a strange pink and brown colour.
From which decade? What decade is that car?
Probably 1960s. Some beautiful cars, some old Rovers.
I've already started eating this, but it's... What's it like, Richard? Tasty?
Oh, delicious. Dead tasty.
And there we go. If you saw the car there, it's absolutely stunning. Oh, I might have the desktop echo back. 1 second. Switch that desktop echo off. It's an amazing car. It really is. It's just an absolute nightmare that it had a sunroof. All the 205s I've had have to be without the sunroof because we've gone from Parkinson to top. The 205, one of the best sporty little hatchbacks I've ever driven. And it was a shame that it had the sunroof because I'm 6'7" and I really need that. It's about 1.5 inches. I said 2 inches, about 1.5 inches, and everyone needs that. Everyone needs that extra 1.5 inches. It's about that much. But when you have a sunroof, they basically just reduce the size a wee bit, and it's enough for my 6'7" body to. I'm not like that. I'm not like that. There's a lot of headroom in a 205. They're great small cars, but it was because of the sunroof, the cutting of the sunroof, where you turn your head to look at your rear view mirror, your wing mirror. I was just hitting the groove all the time. Would have done my head in, and I can't really sort of like sit down further because my legs are up near the steering wheel. So any Peugeot 205 that I look for in the future to replace my current beautiful car will have to make sure that it doesn't have a sunroof. So, but yes, we've gone from Parkinson to Top Gear. I'll go backwards. Hey, who's that old school fool? That little man. He's not little. It's just that I'm fucking huge, mate. He's average size. I'm the one that I must admit, when I saw that video, I was like, Jesus, Richard looks like a tiny little man. He's not tiny, it's just I'm bloody huge, mate. And I'm sitting in a... What's his car? I can't remember his car, but it's quite small. There's more headroom in my 205 than there is in his car. And that's why the perspective looked a bit strange. But yeah, he's my neighbour, mate. Really nice guy. Richard's a lovely chap. He's my neighbour. He's at the marina with me. Probably one of the only real people that I've spent longer than 10-15 minutes talking to here, and he offered to drive me. So Richard's a really nice guy. He's a lot more optimistic and open-minded in some ways than I am in terms of certain things. Little Richard. I'll tell him that. But yeah, he does look little, doesn't he? He's like it's little Richard. But yeah, so he drove me there, and he was really kind to do that. Old school. I thought it was done up. Apologies, it's an old joke. Old school. It's a Beatles reference. We've gone for yeah, caught up with the comments. But it was a shame, really, because I do love the 205. But that guy runs a wedding business. He had 20 cars in there, and they all range from like the 40s to present day. There was a Bentley as well, and Rovers, and cars I'd never even heard of, and they're in stunning condition. He had like 20 in that lockup. But yeah, he wasn't using the 205. He was selling on behalf of his son, who'd acquired it. His son is a gardener, and the 80-year-old he was gardening for said she needed to get rid of her car because she couldn't drive it anymore. She'd had it since new, and it had done like 30,000 or just under 30,000 miles. It's insane. It was like nobody sat in it, and it was amazing. And I would have nabbed it. I mean, it was a lot more expensive than my £200 205. Let's put it that way. But I'm gonna keep mine for a bit longer. Even though it's done 151,000 miles and it's a 1.1. I've kept it in fairly good nick since I bought it. In the condition, it was in excellent condition when I bought it again. So I am going to stick with it. But it was lovely to see another 205 been cared for as much as mine. So that was what I had planned on doing this week, was record stores, and that was going to spiral off into music, particularly records of artists that I'm looking for at the moment, and I found this fantastic record store in Chester. It's amazing for anyone who likes their vinyl. It's got a record booth as well where you can listen to the record, which it's like going back in time. Get a tank, Major. Park anywhere, even if occupied. All right, old school fool. I think you're right, mate. I think that would be. Do you know what I did? Do you know what I like? I like the classic Land Rovers. You know, those ones that you see going over farmers' fields. The sort of like, I don't know that much about cars. So, unfortunately, Richard, I can't quite be the Jeremy Clarkson Top Gear person. I know very little about cars. Aesthetically, I know what I like, but I'm not sure. I think it's the Land Rover Explorer. I think they were called the Explorer. I love those. That's what I want. I want one of them. But they're about 12 grand. For one that's about 35, 40 years old as well. Get a tank. Maybe I should just get the tank. I did put an extra ice cube in my Coke. 1 second. Oh, that's cold. And I like it cold. So yeah, I will keep my. It's in May next year is when the MOT runs out, and I'm pretty sure the shocks are shocked. And I don't think it's gonna get through as easy next year. So I'll keep looking. But yeah, I was gonna. I've already said that. I was gonna go to some record stores, in particular one record store in Chester. Any idea if Tomorrow People DVD box sets exist? I own one DVD. Only one DVD, I think, Libertad. I think it's Network, isn't it? Don't know of anything on the forums either. I could search a couple of the forums and see whether anyone knows. But it would be great to have the full set of that. That was always a program. I think we mentioned it briefly in the stream I did about children's TV. I do have a penchant for Jeeps, old school full. Yes, I've driven one. I've never had so much fun driving one of them. And it's the traditional ones, not like the new crappy ones that go over a bump and the bumper falls off. You know, these things were like you could drive over your granites like Dartmoor on Dartmoor over some like, you know, a granite tour, and this thing would just, so the proper made in Britain ones. But you know, they hold their price. I did look. They were, you know, a good one with a nice chassis and stuff will probably set you back about 12 grand, and they're 40-year-old cars, but 40-year-old Jeeps. But Richard English, getting Camberwick Green in my head now, driving along in a little red car. Do you know what? When I was at that toy fair last, the antiques market and the toy area, they had these little figurines. They had Windy Miller and they had the Trumpton firemen, and they were beautiful. Like they were all like there was loads of them, loads of characters I remember, but I don't know their names, and they were all in there. It was Camberwick Green and Trumpton, and I thought, I got nowhere to put the bloody things, and they're 40 quid. But the Windy Miller one was brilliant. It almost looked like it was like it could come alive. Like you're looking at it and you think, is that the real Windy Miller? It was about that big. But it was pretty cool. But thanks, yeah, I'm glad I put that image in your head, Richard. That's a good image there. Old school full, great theme tune. Tomorrow People, yes, it's one of those theme tunes that stick with you, isn't it? Along in the same breath, like Children of the Stones, that's got a very distinct theme tune. In fact, most of those children's television programs have wonderful theme tunes that stick with you. I was always partial to the Famous Five as well. I think I may have played a little bit of that. It caused a copyright a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, great theme tunes, great memories, and I hope that they do release. If anyone else knows that the Tomorrow People box set exists, then leave it in the comments, because Old School Fool would like to know. Oh, Libratad would like to know. Hugh, Drew, Barney McGrew, Cuthbert, Dibble, Grub. All the names of the firemen. Richard English said, "There you go, Libratad. Just well, if there is, is that the official release? That might not be the official release. That's just somebody who's got a load of DVD-Rs." But DVD-Rs are just as important as you know, especially when the company is prolonging an official release. I will buy a DVD-R just to have it on DVD, so as I can, you know, watch it when I want. Who remembers the Latchkey? Oh, I know the name of the Latchkey Children. Can't find it. I know that. I know the name. I don't know what that is, but I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it. Definitely heard of it. Latchkey Children. I could just quickly. Are we talking 70s with that? Latchkey Children. That's not even come up on a search, mate. Latchkey Kid. Oh, it's just a term. Term refers to a latchkey of a door to a house or apartment. Well, that's pretty obvious. The key is often strung around the child's neck or left hidden under the mat. References. Any TV shows? Nothing on IMDb. Revenge of the Latchkey Kids. Great title. Revenge of the Latchkey Kids, an illustrated guide to surviving the 90s and beyond. Look, we've managed to go full circle on a completely irrelevant topic that's not irrelevant. Sorry, whoever brought the Latchkey up. Not irrelevant, but it's managed to go back to the 90s. I'm not quite sure how it's done that. Raoul wants to be an angry young spokesman for his mid-30s generation, which he thinks has been warped by divorced parents, shortchanged by bureaucratized education, shoved aside by oafish corporate employers and forced to take refuge in a subculture of anger and body-piercing masochism. This sounds good. He makes his case in dour cartoons and chapters, drawing on his own scrapes and bruises with headings like "To Hell with Father's Day," "America's Slave Labour," "Bring on the Stock Market Crash." A sporadically funny result plants well-aimed kicks on deserving corporate and baby boomer behinds, but in the end, Revenge of the Latchkey Kids, an illustrated guide to surviving the 90s and beyond, seething social observations resolve themselves into a one-note whine, C+. Oh, it fizzles out at the end like a Roman candle then. Oh, that's a shame. But anyone joining it, I might just hashtag that little bit of entertainment there. Revenge of the Latchkey Kids. It fizzles out at the end like a Roman candle. So it may not be worth starting to read. It does sound good though, I must admit, with a synopsis like that. Completely not what you were thinking of there, who asked about the latchkey children. But either way, there's something. Who remembers latchkey children? It's an official Fremantle Media Talkback Thames release. Oh, so Richard, thanks for providing that information. A lot more relevant to what I've just read out than what I've just read out. Yeah, latchkey was good. Yep, 70s. I remember the theme tune where the latchkey children leave us alone. Alone? Is it Scottish? Everything's on here. Everything on here is irrelevant, Major. That's the charm. Fantastic, Richard. That is the bloody charm. That's why I love these streams, mate, because it always ends up going into realms of I have no idea. Oh, so I'm glad we found that information. That's very, very good. And that's another reason why I like these streams, because people can get their questions answered generally by Richard, not by me, because I don't know. One day I'll surprise you all with something relevant. So what was I going to talk about? I think that was really, it was the 90s. It was the 90s thing that I really wanted to talk about because, as I said, watching The Other Side of Midnight. I do have 20 other episodes of The Other Side of Midnight. And there's some really car crash interviews with Tony Wilson and other people on that. I don't think I'm certainly not going to upload all of them. It is really specifically for people who are Tony Wilson fans and fans of the obscure arts of the 90s and 80s. Well, actually, I think it ran from 1989 to 1990, so it only ran for one series. Granada only produced one series of it. But it does seem like it goes on for longer. But it does go into the 90s, very early end of the 90s. And there is a performance by the Happy Mondays on there as well, but I can't put that up. Music on this channel would just kill it, so I can't do that. But I if people showed a bit of an interest in seeing more of the Tony Wilson stuff, and I know there are Tony Wilson fans out there that might enjoy it, I may put a couple of other clips at some point in the future on the channel. I hope everyone is enjoying the long chase. And I hope everyone understands why I'm drip feeding that series. I'm slightly concerned about the BBC. But also, it's nice to watch it episodically. And I can't remember who it was, whether they're in this chat now. But somebody said, it's really cool how you're putting it out, I think, roughly at the same time it was first broadcast. I'm glad somebody noticed that, because I was trying to find the exact time. One site said it went out at 4:45. One site said it went out at 5:30. And I was like... And then the person who left that comment, maybe here, I don't know, but the person who left that comment said... I think, and they thought it was like at 5:15, I think it was, and that matched what I'd already sort of found out, and I thought, right, that's the time I would put that out. Hello, Alan. Nice of you to join us, buddy. Good old Alan Hargreaves there. I immediately think of because I remember having a conversation with Alan about who the reference was to. Do you normally have Alan Hargreaves? Oh, there it is. It's right next to it. The Voice of Reason. I originally associated Alan Hargreaves with Alex Belfield. I apologised immediately. Yeah, it's good to have you. Good to have you here, Alan. Thank you for your continued support. Is Mango Fandango still here? I was love Mango Fandango. Say hello, Mango Fandango. Mango Fandango. Queen of Jarlow. I remember when Give Us a Clue had the Grange Hill theme. Yeah, that's really odd. I put a Give Us a Clue on the channel, and I must admit I did not realise that. I did not realise they used the same tune. It was bizarre. It was bizarre that they did. I think at the time, I don't know. I don't know how I would have summed that up in my child brain. It would have been like, oh, it's Grange Hill. No, it's not. It's what's he called? What was the camp guy in that called? Ballet dancer, Lionel Blair. So I'd be expecting to see Zammo Maguire, and I get Lionel Blair. Somebody's replaced Zammo Maguire with Lionel Blair. Yeah, but it probably did confuse me. But looking back at it, I never realised it until the other day when I uploaded the lovely Gleason. I've forgotten her first name. Sally Gleason. So how can I forget Sally Gleason? I love Sally Gleason. I uploaded a clip of that on my channel a while back, and I did suddenly go, my God, it's the same music as Grange Hill. I love all these names. I love you guys because you're always here for the live streams, and I could never thank you enough, because otherwise it's just me rambling on by myself. That's why I wanted to make sure Mango was in here as well, because Mango's always one of the first to say hi, and generally Mango is the one that helps me out to make sure things are working fine, because I'm such a technophobe. So I just appreciate all of you guys, all of you people here, and I love these streams. It breaks up the monotony of my week, and adds a little bit of social aspect. If I'm not sort of like traveling around the country looking at Peugeot 205s or picking up albums by Pat Benatar, I'm generally by myself a lot. So it's a nice thing. Just watched Capricorn 1 this afternoon, says Alan. And Vanishing Point last night. 70s goodness. What a great double bill. Love both of those films. Vanishing Point, fantastic film. Who's the DJ in Vanishing Point? What's he called? Clevedon Little. That's the one, isn't it? Clevedon Little. I love that character. I love the character of him, I love that DJ character, and he is the one person, the voice of support for what he's doing. I always thought it weird that Sally Geeson was Sid James' daughter in Bless This House when she was so posh. Yes, definitely not like Father Light's like daughter, but she was always posh. And I don't know what anyone's noticed, but I have a thing for posh girls. But not the ones like you wouldn't... I don't think you have them. I don't think anyone's posh today. There's certainly... But I've always warmed towards the seeming intellect of someone. In fact, there was a comment on... It'll be good for this one, Richard, because I am going to mention Jan Francis again. But there was a comment... Fact, can I read this out? Because it made me think. I didn't know how to respond to this comment. Was it on my tribute to Jan Francis? Am I going to be able to find it? I know I will find it because it's important. This comment was important. I should do like a thing where I just go through comments and answer things. I think it must be on my Jan Francis tribute thing. I can't imagine. It could be on anything with Jan Francis. Was it on the Rough and the Smooth? Which is getting ridiculous amounts of views again. Oh, where is it? It may have been somebody in the chat that had mentioned this as well, but I don't know whether it was. It was a good comment that made me... I disagreed with it, but it made me think. I still disagreed with it. But it was on the topic of this attraction to... Let's have a look whether it was on the Delectable Jan. Let's see whether it was on this one. Newest. There's new ones. I can't find the comment. Basically, what somebody had said, and this is paraphrasing completely. They mentioned about it's interesting that they used to quite fancy Jan Francis back in the day, but they realised that intellectual persona that somebody like Jan Francis or somebody of that kind of character in a drama television show puts out is less appealing to them sexually as they got older. And I just found that interesting that that they equate intellect with sexuality. It made my brain go a bit kind of it made my brain just kind of go off on a spiral. And I love comments like that because I wish I could find it because it was a good comment. Real favourite of mine. Absolute beautiful woman. Most of the people who write comments on the Jan Francis, on anything I post to Jan Francis, or she's absolutely beautiful, she's lovely, she's beautiful. But that one did make me think that yes, that I guess I don't want to get intellect mixed up with sexuality. Like it's a strange thing. The two should be separate. Do I find posh women sexy? That's what it was sort of like making me think, and I was thinking, not necessarily. I didn't agree with it, but it was a good comment, and I will try and do because I get a few comments on lots of Jan Francis stuff over a period of a week, probably like 30-40 comments, but I'll try and make a note of the best ones, and I'll bring them up in every stream just so as we can talk about the lovely Jan Francis. Yeah, because we can always everyone can talk about Jan Francis. Oh my God, I've waffled on so much that Alan's been right. Sorry, Alan. Let me get back to what you were saying. And it all started from Old School Fool. You reminded me of that comment by saying about Sid James's daughter, Sally Geeson, being way too posh for Sid James. Ha 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 ha. Alan Hargreaves, the voice of reason, Blazing Saddles. And we're out of context again now. Sorry, Alan. I apologise. Oh, you watched Blazing Saddles. My God, you watched Capricorn 1, Vanishing Point, and Blazing Saddles in one sitting. Jesus, that's impressive. So was there Coupland, not obsessed. Not obsessed, Richard. No, not obsessed. Alan Hargreaves, Carry On Abroad is good with Sally. Yeah, Carry On. I love Carry On Abroad. I love Carry On Abroad. There isn't a Carry On movie that I don't like, apart from somebody did mention the one that was the weak one, but everyone knows that one. It was the one that made Kenneth Williams feel like topping himself. Carry On Emmanuel. Somebody from the previous live stream last week asked, if you go onto the live stream last week, I pinned their comment. I pinned Richard's for a while. So Richard had his day in the light for a bit. And then I pinned another comment who asked, what's the competition for the worst British film of the 70s? And I answered it with a film called Come Play With Me. And they reply, I think they put Carry On Emmanuel as their choice. But I was wondering if people went back to see that and then they would start a discussion about possibly the worst British film of the 1970s. Old school, I bet it was my comment. Hello, it was your comment. What would Jan Francis do? What would she do? What wouldn't she do, Richard? What wouldn't she do? And I'll agree. Robin Sid's son is a legend. 7 Gold Vampires. Oh, I love that movie. I wish Peter Cushing had worked with Sydney. That would have been an interesting. That would have been an interesting combo right there. Two greats, indeed. So, Alan. Speaking of which, I rewatched Casting the Runes the other day. Oh, it was your Old School Fool. Sorry, it was your comment. Thank you, mate. That was a really good comment. Sorry, I eventually got there. I eventually put the two together. You're right. It made me think. It really did make me. I disagree when it comes to Jam, but I totally understand where you're coming from. And I was thinking, my God. And I look back at all the women that have made an impression on me in, today, this particular time in 2023, and I watch something from 1973 or 74 or whatever the year it is from that decade, and now I'm thinking, oh, is it because she's really sexy? Is it because she's posh? And I'm just thinking, like, the reason why I'm single now is because I can't find any posh girls. Very posh girls out there, please. It sound a little bit like Jan Francis. Speak a little bit like this. But yeah, no, I don't think it's particularly that. I don't think it's particularly to do with the posh, to be attracted to somebody who's posh. Because normally posh is associated with arrogance and a bit of ignorance and arrogance, and just general dislike for people, they like to, sort of rub your nose in money and stuff. I don't know whether that is a good definition of the word posh. I think well-spoken is different. I think there's posh and I think there's well-spoken. I certainly wouldn't want anyone that speaks in text talk. Do you remember that? When it's like, when they, the lol, LOL things. I try and not put LOL on things. I'm very aware that I'm not a child. And when I write laugh out loud, I'm thinking the person reading that comment is going, why didn't he just put LOL? Anyway, that's a whole other thing. Speaking of which, I watched Casting the Runes the other day. What I would give to be that rubber spider. That rubber spider, Richard. I mean, what it gets to... wrapping around the legs of Jan Francis. I tell you what, the guy that probably was controlling that with a fishing rod, because it looks terrible, as we all know it. It's terrible. It's a terrible scene. I wish that scene wasn't in it. That play would work really well without some of the cheap scares. But I'm pretty sure that would have a fun thing to have been a part of production. Libertad, mine was Teresa Russell, sassy too. Teresa Russell, yes. Worked with Nicholas Roeg on a film. Sexy as hell. Sexy as hell. She was seductive, though. She's like a seducer. She was she was sexy, seductress, kind of, Teresa Russell. I'm trying to remember the Nicholas Roeg film. Can't remember. Old School Fool. I meant they do well at playing sexy. But when they talk about it, they talk like sexy is childish. So now, okay, so I interpreted it slightly differently. I meant they do well at playing sexy, but when they talk about it, they talk like sexy is childish. Do you think that may be of its time? They're playing down the objectification of how men saw them back then. I meant when they do playing sexy, but when they talk about it, they talk like sexy is childish. So they play it sexy, but when it can be seen as sexy, they back down from it. They don't carry it through. They don't carry it on. They're not using it, sexy talk, in a seductive way. They're almost mocking in a way. Is that what you say? Is that a possibility? either way, I'm still fascinated by that train of thought. Richard English, Carry On Sewing with Sid as the monster. Carry On Sewing. Oh, okay. 2 in Clover, my favourite, says Alan. Carry On Screaming is my fave, the Steptoe one. Yeah, Carry On Screaming is considered probably by critics, most critics, is one of the most, not successful, but one of the most critically successful of the Carry On films. I was always a bit of a fan of the original ones in the hospital, Carry On Doctor, Carry On Nurse. And then I am quite a big fan of Carry On Behind, the one without Sid James. Replaced with Windsor Davis, and it's basically Carry On resorting to their most successful, commercially successful Carry On film, which was Carry On Camping. Basically, it's the same film. They go back to a campsite, but I really like that one. I really like Carry On Behind. I think that one's got some great gags in it. And I love Kenneth Williams in that with Elkie Brooks, I think it is. Is it Elkie Brooks? No, she's like an archaeologist. And they uncover some sort of relic. It's very silly, but it's an underrated Carry On movie. Emmanuel isn't so bad, especially if you fancy Susan Danielle. Correct. Yes, Susan Danielle is a plus for that one. Emmanuel, I think it was just the fact that it was the Carry-Ons competing with sexploitation and exploitation. Everything had gone up a notch, hadn't it? Even Hammer were like, yeah, the corset and the boobs isn't enough now. Let's just get your boobs out. Hammer were kind of, resorting to kind of something like that, and I think Carry-Ons had become so dated by that time in terms of what else was on offer for titillation that they just said, we've got to go balls out on this one with Emmanuel, and obviously naming it after one of the most successful films of the 1970s, starring one of the most beautiful women ever, who isn't Jan Francis, Sylvia Christel. They named it after that, so they were obviously going for the full-on nudity. Libertad. Can't stand Blazing Saddles. I like all of Wilder's others I've seen. I want to see History of the World again. Brooks. Can't stand Blazing Saddles, Libertad. Interesting. Okay. I would probably say it is when people think of Mel Brooks, it's that or the producers are the two ones that generally will come up in conversation. And I think the Frankenstein one as well, which those are the sort of the three, I guess. And I say out of all three of those, I'd probably, I hate to say, but I would probably go with Blazing Saddles as being a favorite, a personal favorite. I think it's because it was the first one I saw, and it is the consistently funniest one for me. But each to their own, as they say, and I totally understand where you're coming from. Quaxer Fortune has brother in the Bronx. Sorry, I'm going to quickly speed up. Old school fool, don't get me wrong. I'm all for women with intellect. I married one. Good on you, mate. Good on you. Oh, I'm not. As I said, it's hard. I'm just saying that even if I get people's kind of, what they're writing wrong, I'm happy to be thinking, making me think. So, I totally don't get that about you anyway. So no, I'm very happy that you have a woman with intellect. I wouldn't want anyone else. I mean, do people settle for dumping? I mean, well, look at today. I mean, men and women. I mean, good God, the intelligence level and the conversations. Can you imagine me having a conversation with something about reality TV that's happening on something island, whatever it's called, Love Island? I keep hearing that pop up, and some of the times I hear that being popped up by people in the marina, and they're in their 70s, and they say, "Did you watch Love Island last night?" Not to me, but I overhear it, and I think, "What the hell are they watching that shite for? Why aren't they watching the stuff of their childhood?" There's just no taste for some people. It's like people just like Carry On Behind. But if you get past the missing presence of Sid Windsor and Jack, make a very good substitute. They do, and I love Windsor Davis. I do love Windsor Davis. Jack Douglas is great, and it was hard, I think, at that time because Sid had become such the face of Carry On that I think any substitution was not going to work for some of the audience. But Peter Butterworth, Peter Butterworth in that. I love him in that film. I imagine I love Peter Butterworth in anything. He's always, and I think what that film did, Carry On Behind, it gave a lot of the Carry On cast who aren't normally in the limelight a chance to shine, and I think that's why I like it. There was nobody really hogging the screen time. Everyone had a fair thing. For me, it was Williams in that Carry On Behind that sort of made it his own, and I do think. And I do think that he was brilliant in it. But I think it did open out for a lot of cast members a chance to sort of really shine, including Windsor bloody Davis and Jack Douglas, including those two. Like Beckinsale's girl in Rising Damp still confuses me. What was Richard Beckinsale's daughter called? Did she go on to Hollywood? Beautiful daughter he had. I don't know whether that's a reference to some. Behind, brilliant. Yes, Alan, Behind is brilliant. Elkie Brooks is a singer. I'm trying to remember who it was. Who's the tall Swedish archaeologist in Carry On Behind? Who was working with Kenneth? I always thought it was a shame they didn't make the Dallas spoof Carry On Screwing. Is that real? Were they going to do like a piss take of the oil? I suppose that would have been fantastic. Although, by the time Dallas was... No, when did Dallas start? Was it the late 70s? No, they could have... Was there really going to be a film called Carry On Screwing? Or are you screwing with me, Richard? Because I do like the idea of that. I can imagine... can Sid James going all Carry On Cowboy with his, the cowboy hat and his Texas hat. I can imagine that. If that is true and you're not just winding me up, then I would say that's a missed opportunity right there. Elkie Summers. Thank you, Alan. Yes. Why did I think of... Who did I say? Elkie Brooks. Elkie Summers. Oh, get that wrong. Cool. She was a bit of crumpet. Oh, Ben Manning. That's what we like to hear. There was another comment recently on all it said on my video, and if you're here, whoever's this who said this comment was a nice bit of crumpet back then. No, it wasn't. No, that's what you just said. No, it wasn't crumpet. It was a nice birds back then. That's it. Nice birds back then. I love that comment. I haven't heard that word for ages. Nice bird. Ooh, nice bird. Susan Danielle for Lucky Sam Torrance, a birdie. I'd love to putt. While we're on the subject of carry-ons, I do like that it instigates a lot of innuendos. So a birdie I'd love to putt is up there right now. Yeah, nice piece of crumpet. Young Frankenstein, my fave, says Ben Manning. Peter Boyle in Joe Good. Yeah, Peter Boyle, he's fantastic as the Frankenstein. Surely a Dallas very on would be Carry On Drilling. Oh, true. That is true. I got screwing as in oil, but drilling. Jesus. Yep. That's up there now. Mango Fandango. Kate Beckinsale. Was Kate Beckinsale now? Was she in the TV series London's Burning? Am I thinking of the right actress there? Because if she was, I used to love London's Burning. I watched it with my parents on every Sunday night, London's Burning. And she was a great actress, and she reminded me so much of her dad. And I think she went to Hollywood. I'm sure she went to Hollywood on something. I'm sure she did. I might be getting them. Oh, wasn't there a Beckinsale and a Beckinsale or something. There's like 2 or something. I get them mixed up. They were going for a play on the name Ewing. Screwing Ewing. See, they're getting better every comment. Like, carry on drilling. Yes, I totally get that, old school fool. But now I see why they would have said, screwing Ewing. And I would really have loved to have seen that. Because that would have come maybe after Carry On Emmanuel. God, damn, they missed something on that. Crumpet, nice bit of crumpet. That, crumpet. Oh, top bird, top geezer. Ooh, crumpet. I remember Elaine Page in Confessions. Elaine Page was in Confessions of a Window Cleaner. Elaine Page, as in Phantom of the Opera. Professional singer, and was she in that? I know there was quite a few. I know there was quite a few famous people in the Confessions films. The Oxo lady, Linda Bellingham, was in one as well. Alan Hargreaves, Voice of Reason. Anyone know Two in a Clover? Don't know that. Alan, Old School 4. Rich, gotcha. Oh yeah, you're having a little jive and jape and jive amongst yourselves, which I love. I love blackbirds, Harold. I didn't know you were an ornithologist. Kate was in London's, but they are 2 sisters. Very confident she's not the Hollywood one. Okay. They're 2 completely different. I read that sentence as a 1. But yeah, steptoe in some. What a great line. He had 2 daughters. No idea. My TV interest stopped after the 70s. Mango Fandango. Okay, so you've sort of like stopped then. You're a bit like myself in terms of not watching much after a certain point in time. I can't think of a tell a lie. There is, as I said, I'm watching MASH. I've nearly finished MASH. I have been watching MASH. I've thoroughly enjoyed them. I am looking forward to, and has anyone seen, what time is it? Go on for another 10 minutes. Has anyone seen the trailer for Frazier with Nicholas Lyndhurst? Be interesting to get your feedback on that. I was a huge Frazier fan. So I know Frazier's not the 70s, but there were probably the last 20 years has been a black hole. That's what I would say about, bar the odd show like The Sopranos, Mad Men, Breaking Bad. But they're all American. I can't think. When was Life on Mars? I did enjoy Life on Mars. I didn't enjoy the one after that. The one that they did in the 80s. Life on Mars was good. That was probably the last great British thing I watched, I think. TV show. Oxo Mum, yes, nice crumpet. Like in the series Faith in the Future, Julius Swala inherited the crumpet title. I never watched Faith in the Future, but I am aware of that, and I do get that reference. I like crumpets with jam. I like crumpets with jam, says Richard. Do you know what I like crumpets with, Richard? Marmite. Put Marmite and butter. Not a big... I like crumpets with jam. I was just trying to see whether there was a sexual connotation that I could have applied to that in a carry-on style, but I can't. Old school fool. Pam screwing, Bobby screwing. Perfect carry-on names. They are. They really are. They really are. Samantha Beckinsale was in London's Burning. Yes. I that's a series I want to go back to. I really do. And Jack Rosenthal, a bit of a fan of his writing. And London's Burning, I've recently in the last year watched the film that kick-started it, and I thought it was very good. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Barbara Dixon. 2 in Clover, Victor Spinetti and Sid James. Only 2 series were made. 2 in Clover. I've heard of it, Alan. Not familiar with it. Lyndhurst was the next Mark Lester. Libertad. Oh, talking about the old Frazier. I watched the trailer, and there was always One of my biggest complaints, and bearing in mind I watched Frazier right till the end, but one of my biggest complaints about, if I was to be picking bones at Frazier, was how terribly stereotypical the representation of English people were. If I remember right, Robbie Coltrane appears in playing, and this is when Frazier wasn't as great for me. It was sort of like series 10 or something. It's just that it got really lackluster, the writing. It was cliched English, sort of the cliches of how America see English, and I really used to get a bit annoyed by it, because they were great actors that went, had small roles, cameo roles, or reoccurring roles. It was Daphne's brother and sister, and I can't remember who played. Was it just the two brothers? It was like really established British actors, and I'm sure Robbie Coltrane turned up in it. But it was how they were represented, and it was so cliched and so unfunny. It was stereotypical cliche, and I know the writers are better than that. And I guess the biggest worry I have over the new Frasier, despite loving Kelsey Grammer and despite being a bit of a fan of both Cheers and Frasier, I am a bit concerned over how Nicholas Lyndhurst will be how his writing will be, how Lyndhurst will sort of, whether he will fall into that cliched English sort of character. So that's my only concern there, and I do love Nicholas Lyndhurst. I was a bit of a fan of Goodnight Sweetheart back in the day as well. And needless to say, I'm a huge Only Fools and Horses fan. But Goodnight Sweetheart's complete fun, and a good fantasy science fiction comedy. To be honest, it's up there with like something like Red Dwarf that does science fiction well. And I'd take Gary from Goodnight Sweetheart over Doctor Who any day. I take that sci-fi over the crap that Doctor Who's become now. So I've left. Lyndhurst was the next one. Mark Lester. Mark Lester is thinking of Melody. I've got that wrong, haven't I? Melody, the film Melody. Don't Drink the Water in Stephen Lewis and Pat Coombs and Derek Griffiths. Don't Drink the Water is Stephen Lewis and Pat Coombs. Pat Coombs I know. Don't know Stephen Lewis. Can't picture Stephen Lewis. Pat Coombs I know. My nan used to be a fan of Pat Coombs. Derek Griffiths, who I know from my childhood. We had MASH, we had chips, but we're still waiting for croquettes. I don't like croquettes. Just one or the other. Chips or MASH. Don't try and cover up the MASH with something crunchy. MASH is MASH and crunchy is crunchy. Prefer Cheers to Frasier. Okay, Richard. Yeah, Cheers was the first American comedy show I watched, and I believe it was because when Channel 4 started, I think major channels like BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV passed up on. I'm surprised ITV did, because ITV were, they were showing, all the American shows and stuff, but Frasier, I think. Really, Cheers, I think, really was, it helped establish Channel 4. And Golden Girls. Oh, Alan, if you only knew the story I was about to tell you then, but I'll have to hold that one off. Blake Seven was brilliant. Yes, Blake Seven was brilliant. And ingenious in the fact that you'd never get a show end the way Blake Seven ends. Now, you'd never get a show that blunt ending. Blake Seven has the equivalent ending of the film that I mentioned the other day, The Mist. I'd put Blake Seven down as if you were to see the final episode of Blake Seven and then watch The Mist and take in the ending. They're equally as shocking, I think. I like Goodnight Sweetheart, but really couldn't do Red Dwarf. Doctor Who didn't do it for me either, though I loved Tom Baker and the aesthetic. I like Goodnight Sweetheart's clever. It's got some clever writing. That was what it's got, some clever writing as a fantasy sci-fi. That's why I say it's better than Doctor Who. It was certainly more intelligent than what Doctor Who's become now. I appreciate that what Doctor Who was is very different to what Doctor Who is today. The writing was so much better. And Goodnight Sweetheart was on the tail end of it. It's sort of the 90s. We were talking about the 90s and lad culture. In fact, this might be a good way of sort of, winding down the stream a bit. We were talking about lad culture and the 90s. I think Goodnight Sweetheart certainly hasn't aged well. Gary and Phoebe. I love the story between Gary and Phoebe, and that's the strength. And both Phoebes, where they switched the actress around, both of them are great. Carling and I can never pronounce her Irish name. She was lovely. She was beautiful as well. Derwin. But when they switched them around, that was the going back to this. And I recently watched it within the last few years, and I watched all of them. The person who I can't stand in that is Gary's wife. And ironically, she's that girl power thing, which I've said that I supported to a certain extent with things like Spice Girls and things like that. And, and I know I've had a few thoughts go into my head since then, but she's horrible. She's absolutely horrible woman. It's like, how can you even consider staying with this modern woman? This I think she's got, in one series, she just keeps going on about Tony Blair. It's bizarre. It's bizarre in how power hungry she is, and she's wearing the suits, and I'm the woman in the house, and there's just nothing appealing to her. She's a horrible woman, and it's like just stay in 1942, mate. Just get back there. She's a much better woman. But yeah, I didn't like that actress and his mate. I've forgotten his name. His mate in that, played by the actor from Bread, and I can't remember his character's name. Oh, Ron. I guess he's the dinosaur. I guess he's the one that goes up against he's the other side. I guess they wrote those two characters, his wife, Gary's wife, and Ron, as two completely opposites. But they got it wrong, and it doesn't hold up well today because both of them come off unlikable in what's supposed to be their strength in that series, and I think they're the weakest part of Goodnight Sweetheart. Anyway, that's Goodnight Sweetheart, and that's the 1990s. You've been watching Major Toby's Cat. Let's just rounding up now. I'm going to round up because I've been waffling on, going off on tangents as I normally do. Tarantino was an extra in Golden Girls. Was he? Bloody hell, I did not know that. I remember liking WKRP in Cincinnati, that sounds so British. I'm from Cincinnati. Stephen Lewis was Blakey. Stephen Lewis's classic. Blade Runner had different endings. Pity B7 never came back when the cast were alive. So can't stand Doctor Who now. Dyer. Totally agree with you, Ben Manning. Alan says, I stopped watching Doctor at Sylvester McCoy. Good God, he was terrible. McCoy was terrible. They were already hitting the barrel then. Michelle's a crumpet. Michelle. That's not Gary's wife. That's that actress. That's that Gary's wife. I just can't find that woman attractive. She's fantastic actress in Rita Sue and Bob 2. I love that film. Just that character. It's not the actress. It's just the writing that I think is weird. Ron and is she called Michelle? Or is that her real name? Though love the first 4 docs, I couldn't stand girl power in Only Fools and Horses. It's a pity they didn't keep Dell's first girlfriend. Oh, I like Raquel. I was always quite attracted to Raquel, the actress, and I thought she pulls that off. But I don't think I've ever really equated that as girl power. I suppose so. I mean, it's certainly. I remember Dell's first girlfriend. Yeah, it certainly. I mean, Del needed that character. I think Del needed a Raquel to wind him in a bit. And it was funny when he would keep bashing his head against the wall with sort of saying the wrong thing, or the wrong thing. But I liked their relationship. Rita Suit and Bob too. I liked me. I liked me. I liked her me. I liked her me. Anyone seen the Black and Blue Lamp 1988 TV play that preempts life on Mars by having a police officer and criminal from the 1950 film The Blue Lamp find themselves in a 1980s cop show? No, but if it predates, that's interesting straight away. Predates life on Mars. I always thought that was quite an original idea, so it'd be interesting to see if there's something else that they may have borrowed from. Sounds a laugh. The stream is like Bagpuss. When the Major goes to sleep, we all follow. You think I go to sleep when I end this stream? I don't. I basically I wrote a screenplay this week, but I've got to write the treatment for the screenplay this week. I'm going to sit here for an hour and a half writing, and then I'll fall asleep watching, I don't know, somebody get stuck in a narrowboat under a tunnel or something. That sounds a laugh. We need Blakey's 7. I'll get you, aliens. Good one. Tarantino played Elvis impersonator in Golden Girls. As for Only Fools, it was mainly Cassandra I disliked. I originally didn't like Cassandra. Like her. It took a while for me to warm to her, and by the end I did like her. I really love that episode when Rodney and her first meet and he pretends he lives in Kings Avenue. I think that's one of the funniest things, where she drops him off outside some random person's house and he's just sort of like, go away. I got to like Cassandra as the years went by, but I must admit, didn't warm to her at first. Raquel ruined the show. Oh no, Alan, really? Oh, I love that, where they meet again and she's on stage with the magician. I don't know. I find Raquel and Del's relationship endearing. I find it endearing. I do think that Only Fools went on too long, and I think it should have ended when they became millionaires. I think it should never have come back, despite the fact that there is one episode in there that I absolutely find hysterical. In one of the newer ones, when they brought it back after they won the auction and stuff, and that's the one where they go to France and they bring back the illegal immigrant Gary. that out of all the newer ones, I can't remember. I know there's one where I think they go to Albert's funeral, or they go to France to try and find the ancestry of Albert. There's some good stuff in there, but to be honest, compared to the whole series, I felt that it should have ended when they won the millions, and I didn't really want to see them back again anyway, so I was happy with the way it ended. Raquel and Casey in Only Fools and Horses were okay, but yes, Gary's missus in Goodnight Swing, actually, it was god-awful. Thank you, Old School Fool. It's hard to get through. It just makes me angry, and there's no contest. That's the problem. They've made her so dislikable that there is no contest as to who Gary should pick. If he was given a choice, you're not gonna pick that. But he's still sort of like, oh, I'm torn between two women, and it's like, Jesus, really? Actually, yes, that episode was superb. Yes, is that the one with Gary? When it came out, as I said, there was that one episode with that, and that stayed with me, and I do enjoy that episode a lot from start to finish. She had big knockers though. Big knockers, Alan. Are you talking about Raquel? I forgot. Yes, the singer one, when she was on stage with the funny bloke in glasses. Love that, but Cassandra, I still can't. But fair play. All right, Cassandra, still can't warm to Cassandra. Yeah, that's that episode. I think that's the episode that the Del and Rodney and Albert get locked out of the B&B, and I think it might be that episode. Only Fools should have ended when Raquel had a baby. Much better ending. Yes, Richard, that's probably true. That was a happy ending when Del became a dad, because immediately then that he's going to grow up. He's going to be forced to grow up because he's a father. Finally, he's a father, and I think that probably would have been better. I think what Sullivan did was he wanted to give them a payoff because they'd been wheeling and dealing. Give them a payoff, and they would, obviously now they're going to be rich. But the irony is that they had that watch all that time, and that was quite clever. That they'd been, all these years struggling to make ends meet, and they'd been sitting on this watch for 30 years. First two series were the best. First two series of Only Fools, Alan, they were like social commentaries as well. They were very well written, even more so than later on. They were focused on classes as well, taking the mickey of classes and things. And I think there were a lot more social commentary in those earlier series than what it really became. So, Dan and Raquel Kid was a pain in the ass. Damien, yeah. Terrible actor too. Yes, he was, because he would smile sometimes, wouldn't he? I remember, not the best actor. Luckily, he didn't have too much screen time. But yeah, you could tell when a joke was coming up because his face would be smiling. But yeah, so yes. Anyway, chaps, chapettes, men, women, ladies, boys, girls, cats, dogs, fish, mice, and chickens. I am going to call this stream, I'm going to bring this stream, I'm going to bring it in. I'm just going to bring it in and end it. And say, I bloody love all of you. Every single one of you. Every single one of you. You're here every Saturday. And I love doing this. And I'm so glad that you want to spend Saturday evening going from like A to Z to P to T to A to F to Z. But anyone who's stayed with me from the start, try and work out that direction. And if you could draw a chart, it would be like this. No, old school fool. It's time to salute you, my friend. I'm gonna down in records keep I was it was over when they won the lottery. 70s never had happy endings. That's true. They had beige endings. Very strong step-toe influence, don't you think? Somebody had wrote a comment just before I go. Somebody wrote a comment on the Frazier trailer that Only Fools and Horses wasn't far removed from Frazier, and I thought that's completely different. And then they went on to sort of say what they meant, and they said two brothers living with an elderly father. And I thought, that's I was going to say dear God then, but I can see the word dear John. That is classic, Alan. But yeah, that's true though, isn't it? So is Nicholas Lyndhurst in Frazier such a shock when really Frazier is a bit like Only Fools and Horses? I just found that very interesting. Thought I'd end on that thought. Old school salute you. Old school, I salute no one, says Richard. Yes, that's good. I did salute old school. And I'm going to salute you now, Richard. That's the salute. I was working on cruise ships for a while. I remember like doing this to the captain once, and he went like that, peace. And because it wasn't like it wasn't like the Navy or anything, but it is maritime law, and it is kind of you're told to do things like that. But I remember going, and the captain was really cool. He was an English guy, and he did the peace sign back to me, and I was like, yeah, he's a cool captain. I've digressed again. That's the spirit, Rich. I like Ray Brooks in Big Deal as Robbie Box. Ray Brooks, fantastic actor. Did he do the voice of Mr. Ben? And on that bombshell, have I been in focus all this time? Wow, that camera has done its job. I am going to end the stream. Thank you all for being here, and next week it should be about records, and in particular spoken word, because I want to talk about the influences of television and film in terms of records, and how I grew up listening to spoken word tapes that were all things like Mary Poppins, and there were all things like The Fox and the Hound on picture disc, and so there will be some Disney, and not Disney spoke of in a negative way. It was all of those kind of cinema from such an early age had an impact both on screen and off screen, and I used to like the records from the films as well. So I had a lot of them, and most of them were Disney. They were truncated versions of the film, often edited, and to be able to fit a 33 RPM record. So we're going to be talking about some different rare records. So we've already mentioned something about Captain Kremen in the past, the Kenny Everett album. And I also would like to mention that I used to listen to the Monty Python records as well, because my dad was a Monty Python fan and he used to have the records. And this was before we had videos, and I was very, very young. So the impact of spoken word, along with some music as well, and probably the record store if I can get to it. If not, there might not be a location report next week, but we'll see. Okay, guys, I am going to call it. Thank you all for being here. Yes, Ben. Yes, I knew somebody in there, and I did have the record, and I did listen the crap out of that record. I had the Hitchhiker's Guide on CD. On CD, I bought that when I think it was one of the first CDs I ever bought in 1990. Oh God, I'm going to bore you all silly then. I have too many spoken word LP vinyl in general. Prepare yourselves. Old school full, please remember 8 p.m. or 8:15. If it's not 8 p.m., it's 8:15. But yes, I want your input. I had a lot of cassettes. And I've got it's a subgenre. It's a subgenre that may interest people, and some people may not even be aware, but the truncated versions of sketches, of television shows, you see the records, you still see them, and you've got, people like Jasper Carrot, would release comedy albums, and, in this country, and then in the US, you'd have people like Richard Pryor comedy album. And I just think it's not often spoken about, really, some of these spoken word albums. And I just like to go into it in a little bit of detail and get all of your input on it, really. Richard English. I tell you what I saw. This is a precursor to it. A Ladybird book, Dracula. Okay? And it was 1979. And it was just the book, but I remember having the book and the cassette, and it was a truncated Bram Stoker's Dracula. But the images in this Ladybird Dracula book have stayed with me. When I saw it in a bookshop the other day, I was flicking through. I was like, my God, that image has stayed with me. And again, that leads you to not just the spoken word of the cassette that accompanies the book, but it leads you to the imagery in said book. Magazines, also in my time, magazines were released. Storyteller magazine, which I subscribe to. Marshall Cavendish, I believe. But it's a whole other area, and I'm going to put together a little collection of clips. I've found some things. I'm just going to put together a couple of minutes of stuff as examples. So please do join me next Saturday at 8 o'clock, because that would be bloody lovely. Thank you all. Just finish the comments. Sir Henry at Rawlinson's End before next week, Major. All right, Richard. I know that. I know the name of it. I can't place what that is. Sir Henry at Rawlinson's End. It's definitely gone, and it's in my radar. I will promise, if that is specifically, which I think it probably is, about that subject, then I will be sure to listen to that before I stream. Yes, the book art is great. Frankenstein one too. Yeah, they had the Frankenstein one. They didn't have the cassette though. I really wanted the cassette. Great writers, Marshall Cavendish, When England Was England. Correct. That's When England Was England. Let's get all patriotic. And on that note, let's get patriotic about Marshall Cavendish, and let's get patriotic because it's that time for the outro. So goodbye, everyone. Thank you all, and I will see you all next week. Well, not see you, but, that. See me anyway.